Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest in my series of Changing Lives conversations with my fellow writers over age 50 about the ways that our lives and our beliefs have changed as we've aged, often for the better, not denying life's challenges, but just acknowledging that many of the common perceptions about aging are no longer accurate, and that people in their 70s, 80s, and beyond are writing books and starting new careers and skydiving and all the things. And My name is Wendy Gordon. For those of you who don't know, my Substack is Changing Lives. I started it about 3 years ago, and it was a lot of written essays as I was working through my own mental health struggles and the unexpected end of my former career as a pastor and those sorts of things. And I, starting in January of this year, have switched to doing these Substack lives, more so than writing, because it's just more fun to interact face to face for me and have live conversations. And if you'd like to have one where I'm actually doing a community conversation on Zoom on September 7th, and when I publish this post, the link will be there, but it's just bit.ly/changing lives Zoom if you'd like to take part in that conversation and help form a community of authentic people who just want to stop pretending everything's fine and be real with each other. And one person who does that and helps other people do that is my guest today, Dr. Bronce Rice. So I invite you to say a little bit about yourself and your work.
Hi, Wendy. Yeah, it's nice to be here. Happy Friday, everyone. Let's see, I'm a psychologist, psychoanalyst. Um, so, I meet with people kind of face to face, a little bit like what we're doing here, and kind of discussing, what's important to them, the meaning in their lives, and help them explore, anxieties, depression, hopes, dreams, desires. Uh, that's a little bit about me. We can get into a few other things that,
What's the name
along
of
the
your
way.
Substack?
The well-being equation. And so kind of, looking at the factors that help us bring our health and wellness, our well-being into existence. I think, one of the things I mentioned along the way is that, our well-being equation is like a fingerprint. Um, we all have one similarities, but there are differences that are kind of unique to each of us. And so I try to help people understand kind of what's unique to them and help them explore, well, what are their values and how do you live, how do you think about those and how do you live them out? So, yeah.
And before we went on the air, we were talking about how you have recently written a book, and that, tell us a little bit more about the title of the book and what led you to write it.
Yeah. The title's the same. It's the well-being equation. It's, it's what brought me here to Substack. Haven't got it published yet. So I think I'm close to, knock on some wood here. I'm close to getting an editor, not editor, but an agent rather. And so it is about the same thing. It's about the kind of the factors in terms of how would you go about thinking about your well-being? How do you bring it into existence? How do you think about it? How do you talk about it? How might you share it with others? A little bit about it. I started writing it during the pandemic. So, during a time when everyone kind of has more stress, more anxiety, I couldn't see everybody that wanted to come see me. And so I just kind of thought, well, what do I do? Well, I probably could write a book about how to help others think about how to take care of themselves, self-care, sleep, exercise, diet, those kind of things. So that's a little bit about the book, as well. Yeah.
I liked your analogy of the fingerprint and that the well-being equation. It's not like there's one single equation that is the answer for everyone, right? Because, for some people, meditation works wonders. For me, I have ADHD and I need to be more active in my brain, no matter how much I hear and try the advice of, just observe
Yeah.
the thought and let it float on
Yeah.
by. That doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
But, playing my favorite music, singing and dancing to get out the tension,
Yeah,
spending time in nature where my attention is totally focused on my environment and that cool animals I see, photographing
yes,
them. That
yeah,
works. Whereas for
yep,
somebody else, that doesn't do it for them. They wouldn't have the patience to watch a great blue heron for half an hour like I do. So,
right, right. No, and you talk about watching blue heron for a half hour. Then there, to me, there's a meditative experience right there.
yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nice.
So what are some things that you have found for yourself in your own well-being equation that you would that have helped you?
Um, so you just hit upon one. Um, Kind of being in nature, say observing the blue heron. I didn't wear it today, unfortunately. I got another animal on my shirt, but I have a shirt with a blue heron on it, that I bought probably two weeks
What's
ago.
the animal on your shirt? I can't quite tell.
Uh, I that goes out like a I don't know
Oh, a
what that is,
bear?
badger or something like that.
Oh, badger. Okay, carrion.
Yeah,
Okay, now I
yeah.
see. Yeah. At first, I
Um,
thought it might be a sea turtle on its side, and
yeah,
sea turtles are
yeah. So
mysterious.
it's got
But
like it's got a little backpack,
yeah, now I can
paddle.
tell.
Yeah. So I think for me, yeah, nature. But when I started writing the book, kind of back during the pandemic, I also was more anxious, and so I was like, well, what else do I need? And so I took an hour, for a lunch break, but it wasn't enough to do everything. Kind of like get something to eat. I'll also, take a nap, have a little bit of espresso. Um, but I did hiking either in the early morning or later in the evening. And I began to realize, hey, after seeing 3, 4 people and taking a break, that would be a really good time to go out into nature and just kind of ease my physiology before I would go back to see a few more people. So nature, I take a hike, you know, 5, 6 times a week. I had a last minute cancellation this morning. My first patient canceled like last minute, was going on vacation, forgot to tell me. Um, I said, "Hey, don't make me interpret that." And I went off to the woods and got an early hike.
Mhm.
So in nature, I think that the endorphins. So I want to produce the feel good chemicals, serotonin, dopamine. I think it's like a daily. It's like a daily medicine, right? Anti anxiety, anti depression. So if your body's not moving enough, it's like, well, we all got problems enough as it is. Um, so on that note, and I'd be a little curious, you mentioned nature, but are there a few other things for you, kind of that you have thought
So
that kind of, and let's take it from kind of what we're looking at, kind of like as we get a little older, w- maybe what didn't you know earlier that maybe you know now that you put into place for your well being.
I would say the biggest thing I didn't know earlier in life was the importance of movement. I always saw exercise as this totally not fun thing that I had no desire to do, and why would anyone? Um, and I still like
Yeah,
think of it that way if it comes to like going to the gym for a workout or lifting weights or whatever. But walks in nature, that's a totally different thing. That is exercise technically, but that's
yeah,
active
yeah,
meditation. That's
yeah, yeah.
joyful. That's stimulating in the best way, right? And I
Right.
can walk really fast and then come to a sudden stop and stand and watch the blue heron for half an hour. So I get kind of both. But the other piece for me has always been writing. Long
Mm,
before I wrote online, I journaled, and I still do journal. And I have to start my day with journal. Like before I even get out of bed, I
yeah,
journal, and then usually I also tap. Um, for those who don't know, tapping is also
yeah.
called the emotional freedom technique. It's like the acupuncture
Yes.
points.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, and so I'm one of those people that has to ease into my day. I've never been a morning person. Was always a night owl. And so if I just try to jump out of bed and get right to my task, the rest of the day is off. Anyone
Yeah,
around
yeah,
me
yeah.
can tell that I didn't start my day well.
And so would you say, well, you mentioned a little bit about in terms of the thinking about the exercise, and I agree. It's it, what I try to help somebody try to do is, it's like I don't quite make the rules, right? Our bodies tell us kind of what the rules are, and so I think our bodies do need some movement, some serotonin, dopamine on a daily basis, as I mentioned. Uh, but if someone didn't like exercise, it's like, well, so how do I maybe think about it? How do I think about it differently? As you kind of did in terms of if I have to exercise and go to the gym, maybe I don't love that. But if I go move in nature, maybe I'm not thinking about it exactly like exercise. But if I get components of that,
Yeah, and
hey,
same thing with
maybe I
swimming
like
for
that.
me. I have always been a water person.
Oh
My
yeah, yeah,
husband
yeah.
and I
Well,
lived in Hawaii for a while. It was absolutely magnificent, and the undersea world.
yeah,
I mean, I would live there if I could breathe
yeah,
underwater
yeah,
happily. Um, so again,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
great exercise, swimming, but to me,
Oh yeah, no,
that doesn't seem like exercise because it's fun,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
There
Right.
was a random question just as the chat scrolls through fast, and I usually can't keep
Okay.
up with it, but I saw it
Yeah.
about someone with a dissociative disorder. Would nature also be calming? Obviously, that's can't give a blanket answer to that. I can say
Right.
anecdotally, I know some people for whom that is the case. It is calming,
Right.
but no one right answer to that. Do you want to say more? You're more of an expert than I
Yeah.
am.
Uh, well, on the dissociative aspect, I would try to meet with someone and try to help them understand, what are the conditions that where the dissociation shows up. And let's just say, somebody, gets too much stress, too much overstimulation, too much noise, pollution, various things. And let's say because of that, they might go into a dissociative episode. Um, so I might be able to help the person understand, what those variables are. And then say if they did learn meditation and if it worked for them in some kind of ways, I might be able to help them say, hey, why don't you ease your physiology in certain ways? And then let's explore, maybe go off into nature. Maybe you're just going into a park right away, something slow. And if that worked, maybe then, go off somewhere on a nature trail, half a mile, maybe a mile at most. And go with somebody who you trust,
Hmm.
right? Just to see, does being in nature kind of help your physiology and slow down? Where there might be other people. I agree with you. It depends. It might be other individuals where they get out in nature, it's too quiet. They start to worry more. Their mind starts to move more. Maybe then they're out in nature and worry. What am I going to do? Maybe then they start to dissociate. Um, yeah. So I agree. It really kind of depends. But a lot of times it may have to do with kind of overstimulation or trauma in various ways with that dissociation. So I try to help people understand, well, what are the factors, the triggers, and then how do we help them kind of have kind of a plan in
Yeah.
place if those things start to happen.
And that goes back to what I know now that I didn't when I was younger. As someone dealing with my own mental health issues of primarily depression, but also anxiety, and was completely unaware of my ADHD until like 2 years ago in my mid 50s. And wow,
Yeah,
mind blown because I just knew the surface level stereotypical ADHD, and that totally wasn't me. And
yeah,
as I've
yeah,
done the
yeah,
research and come to understand all these things that I just thought were the way I am, or that,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
some
yeah,
things I was not disciplined enough, or whatever it might be. And I read Dr. Gabor Mate's book, Scattered Minds, was incredibly helpful. I just, his other book, The Myth of Normal, is great too. I just really love his work. But yeah, along with that came an awareness of that I had this great intellectual insight into all of my issues and the origin of them and the
yeah,
way to deal with them. And so my conscious mind was great. Had I could teach a class on all the things, and had years of therapy and done my own reading and just these great insights. But that didn't deal with the tension physically stored in my body at all. And it's been relatively recent that there's been that acknowledgement in the medical field that, or the mental health field, that it's not just a cognitive, and CBT doesn't
Yeah, yeah,
solve
right.
everything, right? There's also the physical aspect. And so
No,
that
no,
has been a game changer for me personally.
no, amen. That's nice. You know, my background, kind of the training, kind of what I'm steeped in, kind of psychoanalytic theory, right? And so you want to put somebody in front of me, meet with them a couple of times, and I just kind of gravitate towards listening for the mind in conflict.
Right.
I think it's kind of like a universal kind of struggle. Um, always interesting to kind of watch what someone does with their mind when it's in conflict. That's that, and I'll come back to. I want to make sure I come back to the somatic piece that you mentioned, but in a younger day, there would have been something where without thinking about it, right? I wasn't quite conscious of it. That if my mind was in conflict, I had to go do something about it. I had to exercise it. I had to go, read about it. I had to go into therapy. Um, and so I can help someone understand more about why they're suffering in the fashion that they are, right? But how much of the suffering is related to an actual problem and say uh, real life.
Hmm.
Not that somatics isn't real life because it is, but how much of the way they're thinking has to do with something kind of maybe being off in the body, and maybe they don't know it.
Hmm.
And so I can help people think about, analyze a bunch of things. But hey, if you're not exercising, if you're not sleeping right, if you're not eating healthy, and the body's going to tell you. Now it's interesting. What does the mind do with what the body's telling you is interesting. So, like for me, yeah, the somatic piece that has kind of come into what I do for a living more probably since the pandemic as well.
Hmm.
But it started. I'd read about it a little bit. I'm like, yeah, yeah, I get it. But it's another thing as you kind of hit upon it. It's one thing to know
Hmm.
about something. It's what you think. It's in another in terms of, well, what happens when you yourself wrestle with it. And what do you do with it? And so the hiking, right? I mean, there's a somatic piece for me. It's like I'm less irritated. I'm less angry,
Hmm.
right? I mean, I go out and I can meditate and get into a state and help me feel the irritation where my mind goes and whatnot, um, which is very helpful to me. And I'm a dabbler, and I'm not a,
Hmm.
I mean, uh, but the somatic piece, at least in terms of kind of like yoga, walking. That's something I'll do, every day. And I think that's something the older I get, the more I understand, hey, that just because I understand something, that I've mastered something, it doesn't mean the struggle is not going to continue in some fashion. Like I think in a younger day, I had that kind of, again, I wasn't quite aware of it in the way that we're talking about. I wasn't conscious, but somewhere in there, you know, there's the thought that, hey, somebody else outside of myself had the answer, and I had better go find it.
Yes,
I-
I can
you know,
certainly relate to that. There has
you know,
to be,
yeah,
some magic pill, some expert who's going to fix
yeah,
my life, basically.
yeah,
Someone who knows things that I don't know, who is going to enlighten me and heal me, from the outside in,
yeah,
versus
yeah,
no, this is all inner work. And they can all have pieces of knowledge that's
yes,
helpful or suggest resources or be supportive in other ways, but they can't, tell me exactly what to do that's going to make me happy, make me
yes,
fulfilled, make me whatever.
yes. No, and I think and it's an interesting developmental piece. I think of being human. I think it's like I think about like a rite of passage. I don't think everyone gets that as far as the understanding and how do you grapple with that? How do you kind of like help your own like growth and maturation around that idea, right? You know, before we were alive, we were just kind of talking just for a second, about it. kind of religion. You mentioned you were a pastor. My father was a pastor for 30 years. I was a priest for a number of years. And so, in some ways, if you listen, I don't care, what holy scriptures, you're reading that has answers, I get it. Um, but then there are other aspects. It's like, well, it doesn't answer all of it. And if you think about it too, like when we were little, right? Well, we don't know the answers, right? And so our parents, community, synagogue, uh, community center, whatever it is, like, well, there are adults who we look up to who have more answers than us. And so they kind of, parents do the best you can, and they hand
Hmm.
it down as best they can. Um, and so there's almost like an ingrained kind of like, oh, someone does have more answers. And so developmentally, when we're young, it's like, well, yeah, some people do. But as we get older, then you begin to understand, oh, my parents had flaws. We all have flaws. Um, and what do I do with it? Right. That's an interesting thing. Right. What do you do with that kind of understanding once it first starts to kind of take hold? Um, but I like how you put that. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's still a kind of an ongoing challenge because our society constantly reinforces the
Hey, I
idea that, you don't have what you need, but if you
yeah,
buy
yeah.
this, if you
Oh,
do this, if
yes.
whatever, then you will be happy. Or
No, that's what I mean. You kind of hit upon a big thing in my book. It's I'm and I'm hoping to help you look at a few things, but I'm trying not to say, "Hey, I've got the answers and here they are. You just do this. Pay me my $5 and we're good." It's no. I want to help you know some about the questions of life, and let's help you. Let's look at them. And I want to help you answer, what they are, because they're going to be different to some degree than what I think or what your parents think or your whoever the pastor was.
yeah,
Man, it just yeah. So I think that's the thing in terms of I don't want my book, which is interesting, right? Because it's going to be in the nonfiction self help genre. So they're going to want me to like package it up in terms of, well, hey, here's the system. I'm like, God,
right.
geez, better be kidding me. Like I might have some things to walk people through to help them, but it's not like ten ways to a miracle.
Yeah,
Right. It's,
exactly. And I have the
yeah,
same issue with coaching, and when I was a pastor too.
mm,
There was you know, some parishioners would, put me on a pedestal and come to me and I'm
yes,
supposed to, have the answer why,
yeah, yeah,
why did God cause this or allow this to
yeah,
happen or whatever it might be, or what should they do? What does God want them to do with their life? Take your pick.
yeah,
And, for some, it was reassuring for me to say, yeah, well, what do you think? I believe that God wants you just as much as to me. Yeah. And for
yeah,
others, it was like, if I didn't have the right answer, what's wrong with you? That's your job. When I call a plumber, I expect them to know how to unclog my toilet?
yeah, yeah, and that's always like for me, it's always an interesting thing because that I have I have the time and space to kind of pose that question in terms of well, what would it mean to you if I didn't have the answers? You know, where did you get that idea that I would be the one, you know, that would be able to provide it for you? I can appreciate the desire in that, even the fantasy, the
Right.
illusion
Hmm.
of that. Who wouldn't want that? But then, once you kind of get into it, sometimes, the older we get, it's like, well, no, I don't want that.
Yeah,
I,
exactly.
I, I might help with it in some situations, sure. Um, but the big questions of life in terms of who I am, who am I? What do I think? What are my values? As I mentioned, how do I live those out? It's like I might want help with that, but I don't want someone telling me, "Hey, this is how you should do it," so to speak.
Right.
And the implication, right, is that somebody else has the answers, and then if you don't, we've talked, if you don't go about it in a certain way, then it's not my system. There's nothing wrong with my system. There must be something wrong with you because it's worked with millions of other people,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
And like,
Yeah, and
okay,
it's so tempting, and you talked about the self-help industry. I mean, here's this billion-dollar industry that's built on offering these prepackaged solutions
yes,
that promise people to get the results they want and the life of their dreams
yeah,
if they just follow this 10-step plan, right? Um,
yeah,
and it's so tempting, and it's especially for me now transitioning away from being a pastor to starting a new career as a mental and spiritual health peer
mm,
coach, essentially,
yeah,
authentic living guide kind of thing.
okay,
I want to help
yes,
people find and trust their own answers, because even if I did know all the answers, which obviously I don't, no one does, the answers that are right for me may not be right for you.
bingo,
And on top of that, even if they were, the process of finding your own answers is what helps you grow.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it would rob you of your
yeah,
agency and your sense of pride in yourself if
yeah,
you only could do something because I told you to and you trusted me versus trusting yourself to know what you need.
yeah, yeah, no question. And along those same lines, I went back to my own therapist. Uh, found someone new, probably been in it less than a year. Uh, he's trained very differently than me, whip smart, and so what I've been up against is and at some points we're talking about the same thing, right? It's like the elephant analogy in the room,
Yes.
right? And there's points where I have to just look at the guy and say, I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't know what that answer is for me. And I've kind of understood, kind of recently, like, oh, hey, that's a pretty good place to start.
Hmm.
That's okay, right? Let's start there. How is it like for me to not know what an answer is, or I'm confused, and to kind of be vulnerable and kind of share that, and look at what comes out for us, as we're vulnerable, as we're kind of saying, hey, I don't know, and
Hmm.
I'm scared. I don't know what the answer is. What do I do? Right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it goes back to what you were saying about earlier. Like when we're younger, we have these older adults that we look to, and they tell us.
Yes.
And even if we later
Yeah.
come to question or flat out reject what we were taught, at the time we're taught it, they are the absolute expert authority figure. They
Yeah.
do know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then we get older and realize, wait, like for me, the older I get, the less certain I am of a lot of things. And I actually consider that a good thing, that I'm more
Yes.
open minded
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
curious. And, um, like as far as religion, when I was a pastor, okay, I'm a Christian pastor and this is what I teach. And, you know,
Yeah.
there, th- there's all this doctrine laid on top of what did Jesus actually say and do? Love your neighbor as yourself. Same thing every other spiritual guru says, right? But
Yeah.
now that I'm not, this public
Yeah.
figure that has to stay in line, toe the party line, if you will,
Right.
um, I can explore. There are aspects of Buddhism that I love and resonate with. There are aspects of Sikh religion, of all
Yeah.
kinds of bits and pieces. Like it goes back to your elephant analogy of the
Yeah.
different people touching a different piece of it. I
Mhm.
mean, however we conceptualize the divine, um,
Mhm.
it's clearly beyond human comprehension, or it wouldn't be divine in the right. And whether it's a force field or
Yeah.
how like some interconnected web or a being or whatever,
Yeah.
whenever we think that we
Right.
understand that being, we can name it, we can tame it, we can tell other people what it wants them to do,
Yes.
then we've
Yeah.
already
Yeah.
screwed it up.
Well, yeah, no, that's an interesting. No, that's an interesting one. You do see that at points, right, in religion, and I think that kind of hits upon something else. As I've gotten older, yeah, I guess I would kind of say, hey, when it comes to love, right, love needs more than just love, right? Kind of from a sometimes from a religious perspective, it's well, hey, you need to be, or depending even a Buddhist philosophy, it's you, you as long as you're kind of loving and compassionate, that's your answer. Like if you don't know the answer, you need to understand that it has to do with more love, more compassion, and that's your answer. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I get that, but I think there's more complexity to life than just that, right? There are points where it's like, hey, sometimes I need to walk away. Sometimes I
Yeah,
need to put
and
boundaries in place.
it comes back to how
Right?
we define love too.
Yeah,
Um, because
yeah,
is love only about, making the other person feel good?
yeah,
Unconditionally accepting, approving of everything. To
yeah.
me, that's not real love. That's maybe
Well,
codependence or something else.
yeah,
But true
yeah,
love it still includes accountability and
yeah,
honesty um and has to be mutual among
yeah.
humans. I mean, if I'm in a relationship and my idea of love is, I'm going to let this guy keep beating me up verbally or
Well,
physically
yeah,
because that's, the Bible says I should
yeah.
be a
The
submissive
Bible
wife
says
or
turn the other cheek.
whatever.
Yeah, yeah. How many times am I gonna let you smack me in the cheek? Yeah,
Right.
right, because the Bible says turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and there's a thing too. You know, I think that's another piece. I've kind of learned, along the way, and as I've gotten older, it's like, hey, not all of this is my fault,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Some of it, sure, I mean, and so the kind of the issues, kind of like with anger, frustration, it's like, okay, yeah, yeah, I have to kind of learn how to kind of contextualize those or kind of live them out in the body somatically and in various ways,
Mhm.
differently. Um, but there's also a part that hey, not all life is loving, and that's okay. I'm not one to say, hey, this day and age we don't need more of it. Yeah, I get that, what I mean? But I think in some ways, I want room for other aspects of emotions that aren't so loving. I want plenty
Absolutely.
of, I want plenty of them. Just so that that was kind of something as I got older, was like kind of that idea that love actually needs more than love as we get older. Right? That was something I didn't think I understood.
Yeah,
Right?
I actually recently read a book by a Sikh activist, Valerie Carr, and she has this revolutionary love project, and the book is titled "See No Stranger." So her whole point is that we need love, but not the kind of superficial, feel good love,
Oh, yes,
that
yes, yes, yes,
like her
yes,
whole
yes, yes.
circle of love includes rage. It includes
Ah,
all kinds of things. Like it's about broader transformation because
yes.
like with our current society as divided and full of hate as it is, in order to be truly transformative, it doesn't work to just say, okay, the people who are currently being oppressed are gonna get in power and become the oppressors and get their revenge, right?
Mm,
And she writes this from a you know lived experience. For those who don't know anything about the Sikh religion, the men wear turbans, and so they're often mistaken for Muslims. And so after 9/11, a close friend of hers who in her Sikh community was the first hate crime murder because he was assumed to be Muslim.
ah,
And then one of their places of worship was actually there was a mass shooting in it, comparable to like the Charleston church shooting, but it didn't get the press and all the sympathy and everything that the ones in
mm,
churches and sometimes synagogues get.
right.
And so like I wasn't even aware of it until I read the book. Had no memory of it
Okay.
even
Okay.
happening. Um, but her broader point is that yes, the ultimately we have to all learn to love each other and see ourselves in each other, not be
Mm,
strangers. But
right.
you don't get there by not holding people accountable, by denying that you've been wronged,
Mm,
by allowing yourself to be a doormat, as someone put in the
right.
chat. Um,
Yes, yes.
so yeah, I mean, it's love is a lot more than just this. Oh, let's feel good
Yeah.
together, pretend everything's fine thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and then that's interesting too, right? It's like, hey, I've got to work on other things, you know, in my life that aren't all that loving, you know, or else, I suppress those aspects of life, and they're going to come out in some kind of funky ways that I have less control over.
Yeah.
Uh, uh,
Yeah, that's actually on a personal level. My husband and I have been married since 1991, and it was pretty much love at first sight for both of us. But one thing we have had to work on over the years in our relationship is the communication. Because when we are arguing, I'm the type that will immediately go silent because I can be really vicious verbally, and because in my family. That was just the way we related with each other. It was like an ongoing battle,
yes,
and
yes.
my parents are divorced, and so are his, and they both divorced after like 25 years or however long of marriage, like when they should have divorced decades earlier. Like I have no memories of my parents being happy and affectionate together, right? But the
Mm.
whole stay together for the sake of the kids, or it's just not financially viable to split up and have two
Yeah,
households,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah,
But so we my husband and I come into this relationship.
yes.
His family is very emotionally
Mm.
distant. His model is that, the worst thing to do is to not talk at all.
Uh, uh,
We
uh,
we
uh,
have to talk through this. Whereas
yeah,
mine is the worst thing to do is to talk it through, because then we argue and we say mean things. So I need to
yes.
get away from you before I
Yeah,
say
yeah,
something
yes,
that
yes,
hurts
yes,
you.
yes, 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 yes.
So yeah, I mean, there again, it's ultimately about love, and we have the same goal of a loving relationship. And thankfully, we've managed to have one despite both of our family histories, and we've been married since 1991. Um, but yeah, it's just working on
Yeah,
the underlying issues and being
yeah,
willing to be that vulnerable
yeah,
and to own our own shit and not just put it all
yeah.
on the other person.
Um, could you mention the book again? There was somebody in the chat who
Oh,
wanted to know the
the
book.
Valerie Carr book, See No Stranger.
Okay, thank
And
you.
Valerie's last name is Carr, Kaur.
Okay, and so you hit upon something too in regard to love, um, that I think kind of that at a younger age, and almost how much I didn't quite understand kind of what the working premise was, right? But I think the idea was that, hey, if I was in a relationship and it was like hard, or we fought too much, like I can understand there are times where hey, you need to walk away, or get out of a relationship for various reasons, but I think the longer I kind of understand things about life, it's just the timing of it. And there's another aspect that I understand more, but the timing of life that I didn't before, and that I assumed that I should kind of walk away, or it's not right if it requires a certain amount of work, right? So one possibility that you might have been up against, depending, that the two different family dynamics come together, you know, and it's always like that when people meet up.
Right.
What's the dance,
Mhm.
and how do you learn to communicate over time about whatever the good, the bad, and the ugly of a relationship is, and that takes kind of time, effort, care, love,
Mhm.
patience, commitment. And if you're still together, my assumption is be, well, okay, well, not that it's not hard at points, but that you got better at understanding. Oh, here's some of the difficult spots. How do we communicate about those in healthier, I don't know, more loving fashion?
Yeah. And just a greater ability to, after we have an argument later, when we're calm, to come back together
Yeah.
and
Oh,
kind of analyze
bingo.
it and talk about what happened.
Yes.
And this is how I felt when you said
Yeah. Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
why I said this and what I meant versus what you heard, all the things.
Yeah.
And you're right. For a lot of people, that's just like too much work or it's just too painful. But
Yeah.
then the flip side is, like I said, with my parents and my husband's parents, some people stay together because they think they have to for
Oh, yeah.
religious
Right.
reasons, for
Right.
the sake of the
Yes. Yes.
kids,
Yes.
for
Yes.
whatever.
Yes.
And they actually would be so much better off, and their kids would be so much better off
Right.
if they just said, this relationship is not
Oh,
healthy for anyone. It's time to end it.
right. Yes. 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 Yeah. And that kind of is a tenet, right? That would go against certain aspects of, I don't know if you say conservative religion or whatnot, but again, it can be there, right? Right. Hey, you get married and it's once and for all, and
Yeah.
that's how God wants it. It's like,
Mhm.
another example of where, is somebody else outside of us has the answer and we had better do it.
Yep.
And you don't question. It's like, well,
Mhm.
where did that come from? Right. Yeah. Mm,
And we were talking earlier about how, no one person has the right answers for everyone
right.
else. And that's, I think, one of the greatest dangers, especially with religion, but with any kind of, life coach, spiritual coach, mental health professional. If the perception is, if they become kind of a celebrity figure, this fully enlightened guru that has all the answers that people become
Yeah.
utterly dependent on, it's so easy for this cult of personality to form,
Yeah.
and people to be willing to literally do anything for that person because they trust them so completely.
Yeah.
So, women become sexual abuse victims, or
Yeah.
people lose all of their money because they believe that person, is using it for good works, or just, they're supposed to give it to them or whatever. There's so many ways that, that authority can be abused, that
Right.
I'm
Right.
so conscious as a spiritual coach now, and as someone who has been on the receiving end of that kind of stuff, to be very upfront with people of, I am not, my life is not perfect now. I am not going to make your life perfect. I have been through some things, learned some things, have some resources I can suggest, and I can support and accompany you and help you brainstorm the best ways to deal with whatever you're dealing with, or figure out what you actually believe versus what you think you should believe, or other people have told you
Right.
you must believe to be saved, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But it's not like, someone who promises, do exactly what I did and you'll earn $100,000 within the next year because I did. And now I earn 10 times that and all the things.
Yeah.
Even if I'm in a great place mentally, emotionally, spiritually, I can't guarantee you'll be there if you do what I did. In fact, it's almost guaranteed that you won't, because we're
Yeah.
different people with different
Right.
histories.
Circumstances and all kinds of timing. Yeah. And that's a scary thing, right? That, let's say you grew up, right, kind of a uh, rigid, authoritarian kind of environment in your home life. I get that there'll be people who will rebel against that, in some fashion, but then there might be people, because we're all kind of creatures of, repetition and habit. It's not a question of if we're going to repeat something, right? It's a question of, well, what are you going to repeat and why?
Right.
Right. And so if people don't understand that we're creatures of repetition and habits, some people may just keep repeating, what they were exposed to when they were young. And so, in essence, you could go from one guru, one Jesus, or whatever you want,
Right. Hmm.
to another, thinking that somebody else has the answers. Because if you're raised in an authoritarian environment, that's kind of what you're taught to believe. If somebody else has it, and you got to do it this way, or else you're going
Yep.
to be punished. And you're going to go to
Hmm.
hell, whatever it
Hmm.
is.
Exactly.
Uh, yeah, 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 yep. Hmm.
I see in the chat someone saying that there's no audio. Anybody else who's watching us live, can you just type and say yes or no to, can you hear both of us?
Yeah, yes. Okay, yeah, yeah. Yeah, maybe no one can hear us.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we're
She's
not talking into the void, but I think more people would have left by now. Good. I'm getting a
well, if you
yes.
get one person who says yes, okay,
Yeah, they
Sue
can
said
hear
yes.
us. Okay, good.
Richard had said no, he couldn't hear us.
Okay,
Okay,
now
he
he
can now.
can.
Good,
Great.
good, good.
Okay.
Okay,
Thanks.
all right. I was probably mumbling. Okay.
Well, I really appreciated, I watched your live with Matt about purpose in the second half of life,
Oh,
and
mhm.
I loved the part about, becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable again. 'Cause
Yeah.
we are starting
Yeah,
over in some
yes,
ways, like,
yes.
even people that do the traditional retirement thing, it's still starting over a whole new phase of life, and you're not having
Yeah.
that career identity that you once had.
Yes.
But especially for those of us who are starting entire new careers in our 50s and beyond, and just doing all kinds of things we don't know how to do, have never done
Yes.
before, it
Yeah.
is uncomfortable because we kinda have it that mindset that,
Yes.
"Well, by my age, I should have life figured out," right?
No, that's a great one. I think that's something I think coming to Substack has kind of helped me, understand that. And when writing the book, I did have this thought when I was younger, as I mentioned, kind of like, hey, I would master something, and then in some ways I wouldn't suffer as much. I would know something, and something would alleviate. And I kind of learned, yes and no. Like I literally spent, if you counted up kind of the number of years I was in academia to training programs, like 27 years straight,
Mhm,
right? And so I'd read, probably 90% of everything Freud wrote,
mhm,
right? I think he's well off on women's developmental theory, but in other ways, the guy was a genius. And so I thought, well, hey, let me start with one of the, as far as my field, right? Mind and conflict. Let me just start there and I'll learn everything. No, and so I became a little obsessive about it. And it's been very helpful to me. But that doesn't mean that hey, because I know something inside and out to some degree. Not that you know everything, but I've had to understand. Oh, you're going to go to a new field,
mhm,
and there's going to be a similar process. And then in life, it's like, well, how many things in your life are you going to know inside and out? Four or five, if you're lucky. So, and so that ties into kind of that aspect. Where you have to, oh, I should know most everything by this phase of life.
mhm.
Right. That's been an interesting one in terms of, oh, how bad do I want this book out there? Oh, this is going to take time. It's going to take money. It's going to take effort. You know, Resources beyond what I'd hoped. And I'm like, oh, but do you remember what it was like to learn about becoming a psychoanalyst? I mean, it's that
Yeah.
intensive, and it's brought back a lot of the struggle, worries. And now I'm like, okay, that's okay. I don't have to love it, but to understand, well, kind of comes with the process then. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had to
Yes.
get to that point, and for me, it's been, um, when I was growing up, I was like the kid that ruined the bell curve for everyone else because I was like the big overachiever, always got straight A's, teacher's
Yeah.
pet,
Yeah.
high achiever, got all the awards, all the praise, all the
Mhm.
things, full
Yeah.
scholarship,
Yeah.
blah blah blah. But I was expected to. And so that was like performance. My whole self esteem was totally performance based and achievement based. And I, I mean, in junior high, I had one report card with all A's except for one C. And did I get any praise for any of those A's? No. It was
Yeah.
all about how could you get a
Yeah.
C? You can do
Yes.
better, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm.
And also, I was basically prevented from failing because if I was in a class that there was a conflict with the
Yes. Yes.
teacher
Yes.
or there was some issue, or I remember once I had a paper that was due the next morning that I had not done, and so my mom stayed up with me all night and she typed it and she made sure that that was going to be done. And I'm not dissing her. I mean, she is a wonderful person. She is
Yeah.
one of my biggest supporters. But I mean, we're all human. We all have different issues, right? And
Yes.
so I learned it is absolutely not okay to fail. And
Mhm.
failing basically means coming in anything less than third place was failure
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have had to
Yeah.
learn as I have started this new career that's full of
Mhm.
uncertainties and things that I don't know, um,
Yes.
that mistakes are going to happen. That's impossible to be a master at something without making mistakes along the way. And that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
normal and even good.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can have fun with it and
Yeah.
learn, and yeah, that it's okay, and yeah, and I think in some ways, right, is if you can teach a child that component of learning, I mean, that will take care of some of that kind of inner critic that we all kind of wrestle with to some degree, right? Yeah,
Yeah, I see in the chat people saying that they wish there was a way to respond to individual comments, and
yeah,
on Subs, as far as I know, there isn't. And on Substack, the chat just rolls by very fast. So I like as
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
talking, I can't even see all the comments,
no, I know.
and my
I can
brain
kind
can
of,
only focus on one thing at a time anyway. So
yeah, yeah. It says letting go is a daily challenge for me as well. And yeah, yeah. So I have a hard. I can see like the bottom one's a little clearer than the top
yeah,
one.
and they
Sometimes,
scroll up,
yeah,
and then it's like, but if shift my focus to
yeah,
that,
yeah,
then I forget what we're talking
right,
about and
yeah,
lose my
yeah,
train of thought. So
yeah,
apologies to those if we don't respond to your comments. We do appreciate them nonetheless, and we're
yeah.
glad you're here. Um,
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
so I'm curious. Since you mentioned that your dad was a pastor for many years, was there any pressure on you to become a religious leader, or
Um, I think yes and no. I mean, I think kind of, just from day one, that's kind of, I was raised kind of in this environment to kind of, you know, probably a love language, certain ways, would be kind of like, acts of service, right? Um, I don't think it was ever like verbally said that way, but I grew up in that environment in terms of, well, that's what my parents were doing all the time.
Mhm.
I mean, and sometimes you kind of hear about, oh, we're out to dinner. Where's Dad going? Oh, he got a message of somebody at the church, ended up in the hospital, and
Yeah.
so apparently he's got to go now. I mean, so the whole aspects of, well, maybe, but also boundaries and various
Mhm.
various things. So I think eventually, kind of, what happened, right? It was a kind of a combination of my family. It was like two things. You're going to be kind, and you're going to kind of acts of service tied to kind of education,
Mhm.
right? So I think I kind of was a little obsessive about the education piece, right? Um, but I think then it was like, well, if I wasn't going to fully continue at some point, with the religious aspect, what would I do? And I'm like, oh, and I kind of make a joke. It's like, well, I'm going to choose a harder profession than religion. Like, I know how to save souls. I'm going to help you save your mind. That's harder. It's a joke I make. But I
Uh-huh.
think that was something where it was like, I just turned something in that was expected to something that fit more with my personality. So I do think there's a little something about that with income growth and maturation, maybe in terms of, parents are going to hand you things. And again, we're creatures of repetition. I'm not saying you got to repeat
Mhm.
all of it, but somewhere in there, if there's some good things that they handed you, how,
Absolutely.
how, how do you live that out, separately, maybe related, but how do you live it out in a way that fits you? Um, and so I think the act of service, kind of the pressure, I think it was kind of like implied in a certain way. I don't think it was ever, you're going to do this, right? Other than you grew up just kind of doing that in some kind of way.
Yeah, it's
You know,
just the
and-
natural milieu that you're
yeah,
around. It's like the
you
water you're
know,
swimming in, so you don't
right,
consciously know. Yeah.
right. And so other people, in the church needed help, and so you'd spend time helping them. It's go, well, that's good, sure, until you're up at midnight, get them to sleep,
Mhm.
and what for me an element was, okay, well, I'm going to obsessively read self help books until I make myself sick. Okay, I mean, it's just an element of it that I was kind of raised with. But
Mhm.
I then, creatures of repetition and habit, I lived it out in my own way. And I'm like, oh, they're not, my parents aren't around anymore. But like, you can't blame it on them at this point. You're not a kid.
Right.
You need to bring this up, analyze it, live it out differently. So anyway, so that's kind of the yes and no. I mean, how about you? I mean, did you get You became a pastor. I mean, did you
Yeah,
get
so it's interesting. To my knowledge, none of my ancestors were ever pastors.
okay?
Certainly my parents, neither one of them were. I did find out later, like I was not aware of it as a child, and when I was in the process of becoming a pastor, that my dad had wanted to be a pastor at one
Uh,
point, but he had hearing loss issues, and
okay.
so I guess for that reason was discouraged from it or didn't pursue it. But at any rate, I was very surprised to learn that later, and also surprised my dad, who's deceased now, died a few years ago, but um, he was on the very conservative end of this religious spectrum, and I'm on the very progressive end, and that became even a more pronounced issue when a certain president arrived on the scene, shall we say. Um, but despite that, I would have expected, I guess what I'm saying is I would have expected my dad to be opposed to the idea of a woman being a pastor. But
Yes,
he was fine with it. He was proud of me. He
nice,
came
nice.
to my ordination service
Yeah,
and to hear me preach in my maybe like only a year or so before he died, when it was hard for him to even travel. He and his wife came to the church my husband and I served,
and
to hear me preach. Um,
it's
so
nice.
so yeah, they're just,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
never
yeah,
know, right? It was
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And yet at the same time, there was that patriarchy, that misogyny, not just from him personally, but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
societally and in the church as a whole.
Ah,
Even
yeah,
in my progressive denomination that has had women pastors and openly LGBTQ pastors for decades, there's still that underlying discrimination that's just unspoken, and like the official position is affirming, but in reality, doesn't always trickle down to the people in the pews,
yeah.
kind of thing.
No, no, no question. Just the piece, kind of what I mentioned before. Didn't tie it to any kind of gender thing, but hey, you need to be compassionate and loving. It's like, oh, it's like, okay, well, fine, bad things have happened. So you should just be kind of loving at all points. How can you follow the rules?
Mm,
If a man says do this, well, you do this, and it's like, you got to be kidding me, right?
yep.
Yeah, yeah, mm, yeah,
And I mean, to be fair, it happens on the extreme left as well. I'm not,
oh, yeah,
just because
yeah,
I happen to be on the left doesn't mean I can't acknowledge that there
yeah,
are
yes,
progressives who are just as hateful to the conservatives as the conservatives are
right,
to,
yeah,
you know. Um,
yeah, 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 yeah,
but yeah, I mean, it's hard for all of us these days who recognize how toxic our social norms and
yeah,
priorities have become, to number one, recognize that and try to do something about it. But number two, do that in a way that doesn't just add more fuel to the hate and the division.
yes, yeah, 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 yeah. How do you kind of figure out how to kind of? It's kind of what I would say. How do you kind of mentally digest
Mhm.
something that's toxic in a certain kind of way? It's a very difficult thing to wrap our minds around. It's to some extent,
Yeah.
yeah,
And especially in the US, I think we're much more insular than most countries. Like most of us in public school either don't learn a foreign language at all, or kind of sort of learn one in high school. Most of us do not travel to other countries unless, our families are relatively well off financially or other things. But I remember the friend of mine who was my mentor when I was a pastor. His first congregation was in a very, very rural area, and a mother of an adult child came to him just in tears, grieving because her child had moved away. And my friend asked her, "Well, where did he move?" 20 miles down the road.
oh,
um, and so that's an extreme example, but I mean,
yeah,
when I think of all the people I know, myself included, I've never even been to Europe. I have been to some other countries, mostly Caribbean islands, because I'm a beach person. But financial realities and others. And I'm not fluent in any language other than
Mm,
English. I attempted to learn Spanish, and
yeah,
while I was in seminary, I was fluent in Koine Greek, could read the New Testament in its original
right,
language. But other than that,
yeah,
so it's so easy for us to assume that what's normal in US culture is a universal norm, is what I'm getting at.
yeah, 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 yeah,
And
yeah,
that there's not an alternative. And the media, everybody feeds the narrative that, oh, we can't have universal health care because look at Canada and how long the waits are to get surgery and all the things to reinforce the system, right? Or look
yeah,
how high their taxes are. And it's like, well, yeah, but if you look at that and you compare that to what we're paying out of pocket because we don't have those things, there's no room for nuanced conversation. We just have these assumptions that are perpetually reinforced, and anyone who challenges them we're told we're wrong, and not to
yeah, yeah,
question it. We're not
yeah,
patriotic. We're not
right, yeah.
whatever.
Well, yeah, or to be a good, in the United States, right, to be a good citizen, right? Well, what do you got to
Yeah,
do?
or a good
Well,
Christian, or
you
a
got to,
good whatever,
yeah,
fill in the blank. Yeah.
right. Well, for as far as society here, it's like, well, you got to spend it. You got to
Yeah.
buy goods and services to be a good citizen,
Right.
right?
And
Yeah,
that's why we are continuously told the ways that we're lacking, and that
yeah,
the way to feel better is
yeah,
to
yeah,
try harder, work more so you earn more money, and then you can buy newer, nicer things, and you'll be better than your neighbor. I mean, it's just
yeah.
so twisted.
Pull yourself up by the
Yep.
bootstraps. Yeah, but I don't have bootstraps right now. I don't have enough money for those.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The analogy would be, yeah,
Yeah, we're very good at blaming the victim in our society, for sure. And so,
yes,
I mean, not that anyone's 100%
yes,
victim, or, but,
right.
if someone is
Well,
evicted, or
right.
unemployed, or
Yeah, yeah,
addicted, it's always like we want to make it an individual problem, or a class issue, or a race issue, or, well, whatever, that group is the problem. It's not that our whole society's
yes.
systems and priorities are completely screwed up.
Mhm. Yeah, 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 yeah. And so you hope that as people kind of get older, you have more flexibility and understanding. Yeah, but it's not. There's not one way to go about something. There's not one way to love somebody. Yeah, and we don't have to agree. Somebody can love something, somebody else doesn't have to. Right? Yeah, to be okay, with complexity, nuance, differences, right? The
And
other
even in
one,
my
right?
lifetime, there's been such a dramatic shift, because I remember, like, at least up until the Reagan years,
Mhm.
and some beyond that even, there were shared values, and that, like, we agreed on the facts.
Yeah,
Okay, we might
right.
disagree on whether something was a problem, and we
Yes.
might disagree
Yeah,
on how
yeah,
to
yeah.
solve the problem.
Right.
And so, but yet we could have civil conversations about it, and we
Y
agreed on the same, okay, this is the reality. We may totally disagree about what to do about it, or whether that
Right,
reality is good or bad,
right,
but at least we can have conversations that start with, this is where we are. Do we
right,
want to be here? If we don't
right,
want to be here, where do we want to be? How
right.
would we get there? And I remember enjoying these vigorous debates,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that and still being friends with the person I had the debate with. And
R
now
right,
that seems all but gone, virtually impossible now. I can count
right,
on one hand, maybe one finger, the number of people that
right,
are, on the opposite side of whatever
right,
political, religious spectrum, that I can have mutually respectful, engaging, articulate conversations with about
right.
matters of substance.
Yeah, right now, right, and now if you're, these the politicians, right, in the United States, at least, yeah, if you're gonna reach across the aisle, then you're demonized,
Mhm.
you know? Right, it's
Yeah,
not
the chat
okay.
says this is our post-truth reality. We live in a fragmented or dissociated society. And part of it is that it's so easy to stay in our own silos. Like, I don't have to be on social media at all. And if I am, I can control who I'm friends with, whose post I see or respond to. I
Yeah.
can control which cable news channel I watch, if any,
Yeah,
or,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
who I believe, essentially. And
Hmm.
now even the what once reputable sources have either been co-opted because of who owns them or fear of retaliation, or they're impersonated because AI and other it's so easy to fake anything now, right?
Hmm.
So it is just there are so few public gathering spaces anymore to just be real with each other and not immediately be on the defense or feel the need to attack the other and correct them.
Right, right. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. So, that's why, like, I think for me, right, I might have some anxiety about coming on and kind of being live in various ways, but at least there's kind of like a place to kind of connect,
Mhm,
attempt to, and to try to kind of have a important conversation about, for me, health and wellness, and how, kind of how to go about that, below the surface, and have some of the anxiety be okay, and part of the conversation. And there's not, not something wrong with it.
mhm.
Got to hide it, do away with it, suppress it, project it. Right. We can have a discussion about kind of the complexities and nuances, emotional spectrum. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because if you don't, I get what we're hitting upon. Right. You kind of then have a society where you got to go about things in kind of strange kind of ways. And the mental health, so to speak, of a society,
Mhm.
um, becomes more threatened in certain kind of ways. It's very, yeah, it's very kind of difficult to think through what you're hitting upon, right? How do we have kind of a more engaged way about life in various ways, when kind of what we're trying to engage with is sometimes part of the problem, right?
Yeah, there are just fewer and fewer safe people to do
Yeah,
that with.
right.
And I will wrap up soon because I try to keep these to an hour, but I
Yeah,
always
yeah,
want to
yeah,
talk
yeah,
for at least an hour
yeah,
more.
yeah. Noise,
Um,
yeah,
but that's why I mentioned at the beginning I'm doing this Zoom community conversation thing on September 7th. And the main reason why is because I'm just so aware with everyone I talk to and myself of this need for authentic community and a space to stop pretending everything is fine in our own lives or the world and just be real. We don't have to solve all the problems, but we can just support each other and find that common thread, that underlying humanity. Because in my experience, no matter how diverse our experiences are, our beliefs are, our actions are, there's underneath that, there's this fear that we're not enough, that we are lacking somehow, that
mm,
we're and that when we get
yeah,
to the space where it's safe to
yeah,
acknowledge that and find that
yeah,
common ground,
yeah.
then those other societal transformations do become possible, starting
Mm,
with our own inner work and then, family, community,
yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah,
and it's
yeah,
starting to happen now. Absolutely. And I want to be part of that. And I know that I can't do it alone. And
yeah,
I did a 6 week Zoom spiritual support group
mm,
that included a pagan, a witch, an atheist, a wonderful group.
yeah,
And all of us, by the end of that 6 weeks, the participants said, I have shared things here that I have not told my closest friends. Can we please keep this going? We'll pay you more to keep meeting. So we have been. But
yeah,
but that's another reason I'm starting this new community is because there just aren't enough places anymore. Even spaces that once did provide that
yeah.
don't anymore for some people for various reasons have become not safe places.
No, it's very interesting. No, because what they're talking about, to some degree, like, I will provide that, hopefully, right, that safe space. I will provide that on an individual basis and explore some of the things that people you're talking about. Um, and so that, as you begin to discuss that, like, to me, it was like, oh, you're talking about healing. Now, it may not be, it might not be
Right.
healing for certain people, but that's, kind of where I go, where I go, right? We're just kind of like a knee jerk reaction. You talk about, oh, okay, that's an aspect of healing. Yeah.
Mhm.
Huh. Oh, very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the younger dad have been like, "Oh, you're doing God's work." You know? Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm, mm.
and I think we're all doing God's work, whether or not we use the term God, whether or not we believe
Uh-uh.
there is a God, if we
Yeah.
choose to. If we choose to
Yeah.
try to understand each other, to be
Right, right,
compassionate, not that we don't also hold people accountable or just have an anything goes mindset, right?
right.
But the genuine attempt to understand and support each other, and make a positive difference in whatever way we can. Um,
Yeah, 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 in the kinda like the human connection,
yes.
the heart of the matter, so to speak. Yeah, I mean, that's it's so needed, obviously. Yeah. And to what interesting, again, for me to kind of think about what you're doing kind of as you're thinking about in terms of broader social community
Mhm.
aspect in terms of what there's not as many spaces to do that as far as in a community anymore. I get it. It was like that's like kind of the aspects of what you're talking about is what so much so many people are kind of yearning for.
Mm,
Sometimes
absolutely.
they don't even know it.
Right.
Sometimes until it's provided, right? Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I always say I created the group that I needed, and
Yeah, no,
I knew,
that's good.
you know,
Even better, even better in my mind. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah,
and I'm glad other people needed it too, and that I can help bring them together.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
well,
yeah.
it is wonderful. Thank you all for joining us. A couple people are starting to say have to go now. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I have to go too. It's been over an
Yeah,
hour, but
yeah,
thank
yeah.
you so much, Bronce. It's been a great
Yeah.
conversation, and maybe we'll have another one sometime.
No, I would love that. I would love that. This has been great. Happy Friday, everyone. Go out and do some kindness out there, eh?
Yeah, or enjoy nature.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Both. Right, 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 right.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.